Hello everyone, welcome to my first video on this YouTube channel. What I'm going to discuss is note keeping for judges. More specifically, what I'm going to discuss is the overall purpose of notes, after which I'm going to explain the big picture and small picture notes. I basically have a system of notes where either it's going to be big picture or it's going to be small picture, and each set of notes is basically going to fulfill a different set of goals that you have for your notes. This is going to be, quite abstract maybe. So that's also why I'm going to discuss a specific example. I'm going to analyze my notes that I have used during Oxford IVE last weekend. So let's get into it. What is the purpose of your notes? Largely, there are two things that you are going to use them for. You're going to use them for the deliberation period and the feedback period. So during the deliberation period, there are some specific things that can be asked of you. Firstly, they can ask you, what did teams exactly say? So if there is a question, to what extent a team has proven a specific claim, you want to go into a bit more detail. You want to be able to point to a specific place in a speech and be able to basically quote or at least give a good gist of what a person has said about a specific point. Secondly, you also want to be able to actually understand how different pieces of analysis compare to each other. So let's consider the example where you are listening to the leader of opposition. The leader of opposition most likely will bring rebuttal to the prime minister, the first speaker of opening government. If that is the case, at the moment you already have an overview of what opening government is talking about, it is easier for you to understand what the case reacts to and what it doesn't react to. It therefore is easy for you to understand if opening opposition is, being tactically about their rebuttal, if they are winning opening half, if they're doing a good job or not. It also means that at the moment you want to compare these teams, that it becomes easier, right? So you can solve the third question, which is, what do specific teams do better? So at some point, you're going to have an overview of what teams have said. And you might already see from that some teams have a lot of time spent on impacting, but other teams might have spent more time on explaining how they get to that impact. So they have more mechanization, for example. At that moment, you're able to understand what the comparative advantage is, using economic terms. So at that moment, you might be able to give yourself already a bit more weighing of what teams could win on or are winning on. This is going to be important because it all trickles down to the last question, is why does one team beat another team? And oftentimes you just need these previous questions to answer these questions. So, what does this team say in the first place? And how does this analysis compare to what other teams have said? And then where do we think that one team does better than the other one? It is important to basically have notes that do all of these things, because all of these things might be in contention during deliberation. And therefore, it's good that you're going to have notes that are able to answer all of these questions. However, deliberation is not the only part of being a judge. It's also about giving feedback to other judges and speakers. So at the moment that you have notes, those notes can be used to tell them how they can use their, I would say, maybe meta skills. These are things such as like structure. These are things such as style. Was a person rambling in a specific point way too much? Were some things unclear? All this kind of stuff. Also important thing for your notes is if it gives you the answer, how they can improve specific analysis. So at the moment, you find something unclear in the speech, and you've already highlighted that in your notes. You're able to more quickly point this out during feedback, and you can also give maybe more reasons why you believed something or you didn't believe something. And lastly, it's also going to be important that you're going to be able to answer the question how they can improve tactics-wise. So at the moment that you have done the first two levels, which is, can I just understand what you're saying? And, on the specifics, what is your analysis good at? Where should they maybe have spent more time on? Or what should they have rebutted more from the other teams? Or what kind of was missing from the speech? That is more a big picture thing that you need to know and maybe can see where they have or haven't spent their time in. Lastly, there's also, something that people might ask of you. they have specific analysis that they thought might be strong, or they were just wondering how this plays into debate, and they can just ask you how you bought it. Did you buy it? Did you think it was good? All this kind of stuff. And if you're able to actually know what they're talking about, and you already might have some notes on what was stated, then it's going to be easy for you to give that feedback, because you're now not just processing what did I actually think of this analysis, rather you've already written it down, and then you can maybe view the consequence of this. So given that I have this problem with your speech, what can I advise you to do next time to actually be better, as the slogan is of the Dutch competitive platform. So now let's go into the more detailed analysis. So what kind of notes do I use? I use two sets of notes, as I've already stated, the small picture notes and the big picture notes. So the small picture notes are going to be notes which are going to give a more detailed summary of a speech. So oftentimes what I specifically write down are sentences or short sentences. And in this part, I'm oftentimes also going to use color, so different color pens or pencils, and I'm basically going to, put in questions, put in some feedback, but also just make some remarks. These questions can be, for example, why is this the case, or what is the alternative? Feedback can be, this is a bit unstructured, or this is a bit rambly. And remarks can be, this reacts well to the case, or this needs more impacting, all this kind of stuff. This is useful for multiple reasons. Not only are you able to give more direct feedback to speakers, because you can just see what you bought and what you didn't buy, but it also means that at the moment you're going to go to the big picture, which I'm going to talk about later, you're already going to be able to assess what you buy and what you do not buy. This is also important because at the moment you're going to have this small picture sheet. It also means that you're able to, during deliberation, go over these notes to see if you have missed some analysis in your big picture sheet. So this is oftentimes what I am going to be looking at in the first 2-3 minutes of deliberation times, where people have some time to look over their notes. Oftentimes I'll just go over to make sure that I haven't missed anything on the big picture sheet, and then I'm going to go then onto the big picture sheet. Now, what is the big picture sheet? So the big picture sheet is just going to be an overview of arguments. This is oftentimes going to be in either very short sentences or even just in only words. And maybe a way to give you an example of this is, let's say you have the motion, this house would legalize all drugs. And the government talks about drugs are going to be safer because transporting them isn't illegal, so people don't make the drugs very strong because they need to hide it. Now, that analysis can even have 5 more sentences or half a minute of more analysis. But in the big picture view, I can just put in drugs are safer as arguments, and there's reason for it. Smuggling is calm, or just even just like smuggling with a cross. So, you can use symbols here if you're more of a picture thinker, or that just is a bit quicker for you and you find it important. So what else do I have on the sheet? Because it's not just only going to be a summary of the cases. Oftentimes, I also have weighing and interaction between teams, and sometimes even clashes. This is oftentimes done in a different color. So let's say, again, you have the argument about smuggling, and somebody rebuts that, and somebody has a direct rebuttal to it. In the overview sheet, I then have a red color pen that I write the rebuttal on this specific point, and then I basically keep track of rebuttal this way. Because at the moment you're going to use this analysis in the big picture sheet, it sometimes isn't clear what is reacting and what is just defending something. So this is a way for me to distinguish if something is a reason why something is true on their side or it is not true on their side. And the same kind of like goes for weighing. So if the weighing is like, this is more important than that side, it is something that I have to do in a different color, because then I can immediately gravitate towards it if somebody asks me why I think one team might take it over another team. The same just goes for clashes. Sometimes I just put clashes in between, in the sense that I just think these are the clashes, and then I can just highlight them, and I can, highlight the material that falls under these clashes. So then when do I use this big picture view? Oftentimes it's just to compare teams. So at the moment you have the question, why do you think that closing government takes it over opening government? I'm able to see this what opening government brings. This is what I think closing government brings new, and this is why I think closing government's analysis is better than opening government's, or the weighing is better, or the impacting is just better, all this kind of stuff. But it also just gives me a really good oversight of the arguments. So oftentimes when I'm giving an OA as a chair, I'm only using this big picture sheet to talk about the teams and why one team wins over another team. So this might be a bit abstract, and I've tried to use already a couple of examples, but that might not be clear how this actually translates into paper. So let me get an example of at least the small picture notes. So the small picture notes are for me organized this way. Let me put on the laser pointer. Yeah, on the left top, you see a Roman numeral with a 1. That is because this is the first speaker. The left side basically denotes the prime minister, and the right-hand side is the leader of opposition. Now, the blue is what people have stated, and the red are basically my comments, as I already stated before. So let's just maybe look a bit more into what people have said, because there are a bit more nuances to the way I keep notes. Firstly, I have different numbering systems. So if you look here, for example, on the left side, I have 1, 2, and then here I also have 1, 2, 3, and those are Roman numerals. Maybe you can read it, just trust me, those are Roman numerals. What does that tell me? I don't even exactly know what this debate was about, but what I do know, based on just these Roman numerals, is that these are mechanizations. This is a reason why it's true. On the other side, here I have also Roman numerals, and then under that I have A, B, and C, and then I have circled them around. What does that tell me? This tells me that this is rebuttal, because I thought this was going to be a reason why something is true. Then I started with Roman numeral 1, and then instead of actually using what I would normally use, which is just a normal 1, I had to make it a number numeral that was just encircled. And then A, B, C are just the kind of like responses to this. Now, why do I do this? I do this because it gives me an oversight of how a speech is structured. So here I immediately know this is rebuttal, this is constructive. I use ABC also oftentimes for weighing or impacting. So later on, I can be like, oh, I need to know what impacting is. I see ABC on the small sheet, and I'm like, oh, this is what they said weighing wise. That is how I'm able to use this sheet. But I also want to note that if you look more specifically and you look more closely, you're going to see that there's some words which are have a line under it. Oftentimes, this is where people put emphasis on words. So this can either be, this is the main point, so this is talking about settlements, and then they put the emphasis on that word, and I put a line under it, which means that at the moment I'm looking at my notes, I immediately look at that word because that is highlighted. This is going to be good because I know now the overall structure. I know what this is about. This is something about, settlements being bad, and then here are responses to that. But also sometimes means that I do this on words which are more linking. So, for example, you can have a but, or you can here have here stands comp, which is short for comparative. And then I mean, oh, the comparative is what this is. So then it is the previous analysis and then compared to what the alternative world would look like. So it also immediately highlights for me what different parts, how different parts of the speech structure and link to each other. So now let's get on to the questions that I have, which are denoted in red. Here I have the questions like why, which basically means, I need some explanation of why this is true. And here there's just also a general note of no PY, which is bad because I'm just going to deduct speaker points because of it. And also here I have in red, I don't know if you're able to read it, most likely you can't, but it basically states that it doesn't engage with OG. So it doesn't really talk about what OG talks about. So this is rebuttal, but it's not rebuttal what OG actually refers to. That's important because, again, for feedback, I can basically give this feedback immediately. I can be like, you bring this point of rebuttal, but you need to be a bit more careful about how you go around framing opening government, because this is not what they're saying. But also, at the moment I go into the big picture sheet, I'm able to see that this is indeed rebuttal to opening government, but I don't credit it. So therefore, I might put a cross on it, or I might not even write it down on the big picture sheet because I just don't buy it. Now, let's get on to the big picture sheet. This is the big picture sheet, and on the top left, you will find opening government, top right, opening opposition, then left below, you're going to have closing government, and then right below closing opposition. The colorings are going to be slightly different than what was in the small notes. So in the small notes, you have blue is what people stated. That's the same. But red here refers to rebuttal. Because if you just put here some lines, I have here some lines as well. Why do I have these lines here? It basically means they have something here about, reciprocity. And then they have two different reasons why the reciprocity is the case. And therefore, this is still part of the constructive. This, however, is direct rebuttal to the point about reciprocity. And I'm able to differentiate that because it's a different color. Now, it is possible that opening government could actually react to this rebuttal. If that's the case, I would then use my blue pen to put a line here and then write some text here as rebuttal to the rebuttal. And then if I believe that that rebuttal is good, then I would cross out this rebuttal because I don't buy it anymore after opening government. This is the way how I keep in check what the reactions are. So this can be rebuttal, but this can also be framing. This can also be weighing, all this kind of stuff. For me, I just needed to have a differentiation between constructive and destructive material, and I need to know what was reacted to, and this has really helped me with that. Now, what else do you see? Again, you see different kinds of numbering. So on the right-hand side, you will see 1, 2, 3. Those are just the arguments. And then you can have here in Roman numerals 1, 2, which are mechanisms for why the argument is true. Again, as you will see, these are just small sentences, literally only even words, sometimes even just signs. So what else can you see? You can also see here the large and equal signs. The large and equal signs denote for me which team is winning. So in this specific debate, opening government is losing to opening opposition because the larger equal sign is pointing towards opening opposition. This is something that I'm already going to be doing oftentimes during the debate. So let me go maybe a bit into detail what I do during the debate. When I'm watching, when I'm listening as a judge, I'm going to firstly prioritize the small picture sheet. Because if I have it written down there, I can always add it to the big picture sheet. Oftentimes, at the moment they start the speech, people will say, this is what I'm going to talk about. Here are the 3 things I'm going to talk about. I oftentimes will just put 1, 2, 3, or like here, 1, 2, 3, and then I'm just going to put it up there, and I at least know the overall structure, and then I'm going to go further with my small notes. Sometimes people are going to use an example or something that I already know, or they're repeating themselves, and if that's the case, I will write more stuff in the big picture sheet. Or after I have something written down in the small picture sheet and I feel like I still have time left over to do the big picture sheet, I write the reason that they have just talked about in 1 word on the big picture sheet. So these signs will oftentimes also be written already during the debate, because to be good time-wise, you oftentimes already need to have a reason why one team takes it over the other. And you don't want to use most of the deliberation times just thinking about this in the first case. So these crossings, like this larger equal sign, will oftentimes be written after the DLO when I believe that, okay, I now know who has won this debate, or at least this part of the debate. Now, the same kind of like can happen later on. And that is the way that I basically make sure that I'm also always comparing the teams, because this forces me to think about, okay, yes, teams have said this, but who do I think is winning this debate? Which is a very important question to ask yourself. Now, lastly, I want to note that maybe some of you have already seen this, but below here, I have things written down. What does this stand for? So this is basically my panelist. This is me. And this quadrant is OG. This is OO. This is CG. This is CO. And it's basically just the numbering, the score. This is something I only do like when I'm in deliberation, when I'm considering what teams are winning and why. And I will just put down my initial call here, and then I will put the initial call that my wing has given me. And then this one is normally the one that we end up with. In this case, it is only opening opposition beats opening government, as you can see by this larger sign. The reason being, if you already look here, we both have closing opposition first, closing government second. We only disagreed in opening half. So therefore, I only have that written down here. And this can also be useful for you to kind of like keep in mind what other people are referring to or what they are weighing when they're, for example, talking about opening government and closing government. That they are indeed trying to explain to you why closing government is beating opening government or the other way around. But this is something I don't write down, during the debate. So I want to end with some footnotes because I've went into quite some detail on how I do notes. However, I am just a person. I am just a person who judges debates, and I do it in my specific way. There is no one way to take notes. It really depends on your needs. So how well do you remember analysis? What do you find hard to track? Uh, where should you put an emphasis on? All this kind of stuff. So I already highlighted this is for me, I need to really differentiate between rebuttal and constructive in a clear way. And that is why I have these different colors on a big picture sheet. Maybe you find it too confusing and you actually want to put that as part of the constructive material and use the same colors. But rather, your big pictures of feedback or weighing, those are the things that you might want to put in different colors. That's all completely fine and legitimate because people just have different needs. And I also want to note is that these needs can even differ per debate. Sometimes I feel like just stating what people say is not enough because there is just maybe a lack of weighing or there's just way too much implicit material or implicit clashes that are in this debate. At that point, I often write down what the clashes are in my big picture sheet and then what teams are saying and why they are winning that clash or not winning that clash. This is different than what I've already shown, but most of the times I use the big picture that I have already shown. Again, it might differ, and I would highly, highly, highly recommend you to just experiment. So try different colors, try different structures. Maybe you don't want to place the rebuttal in the middle. Maybe you want to put that maybe still in different colors, but still to the sides. And then you want to do the weighing or the reasons why you have one team over the other only in the middle or in between teams. Also completely fine and also completely fair. It is just about what helps you deliberate and give feedback the most. This is just something that you can try, something that you can maybe start off as a fundament and then experiment on and find something that caters to your specific needs. I would also recommend ask different chairs and wings how they take notes. I have significantly improved in my note keeping by just asking, how do you write down weighing or how do you write down rebuttal, all this kind of stuff. People have different formats and something might suit you, something might not suit you. But at the moment, you're at least aware of this and you're able to try that for next rounds, either at a tournament or maybe when you're just debating in your society, you're able to better find what you like, what you don't like. And I hope that this has been useful. I hope that this was clear. If you have any questions, you can always put them in the comments. And then I will see you in the next video.